In the social justice system, special snowflake offenses are considered especially heinous. On the internet, dedicated skeptics who investigate these vicious crimes are members of an elite squad known as the Special Snowflake Unit. These are their stories.
Welcome back, Wolfpack. Direwolf here for a midweek show. We're going to be talking about a single subject. That's going to be fake news. But before I get to that, let's introduce my co-host, Fox. How you doing, Fox?
I am doing great, and we are doing the show Rain or Shine. But tonight it is rain. I had such severe weather, I had to abandon my apartment and go somewhere else to do the show tonight.
That's dedication right there.
That is, I put pants on after 9 p.m. for the show. You guys should be very excited that I did that. That's my level of dedication.
I am so honored that you would wear pants for the show. That's dedication right there.
That is.
So, what we want to talk about today is there's been an extraordinary amount of fake news about Trump recently, and just some ridiculous articles. But the chief topic among them has been the continued accusation that Trump is a racist and devolving into conspiracy theories around that. So I'm sure, Fox, you've heard a lot of these already.
Yeah, we are not joking when we say conspiracy theories. Some of the stuff we're going to go over tonight is so far beyond the pale into conspiracy territory. Alex Jones would not even host some of the stuff on his show if he heard it. That's how far out this stuff is.
Yes, I get the feeling that if Alex Jones were to watch or read some of these articles, he'd say, "Whoa, dude, that's a little far-fetched." So
Clearly not too far for MSNBC, though.
no, they definitely jumped the shark on this one. So the first one is an article about, it says Trump condemned white supremacy after the El Paso shooting, but his administration has made it harder to fight. Now, that's from the Business Insider, but the original title before they changed it was Trump's condemnation of white supremacy is not matched by his record. Not sure why they changed it, since they seem pretty, resolute on the narrative. But basically, this is one of many articles making the claim that Trump is and has always had a racist message.
And those are some pretty lofty claims. I mean, for the first title, that his record doesn't reflect that. I mean, that's a statement of fact. I hope that the article goes on to prove that. Otherwise, man, what are they thinking over there?
Well, I can give you a synopsis using the next article, two articles, that basically are the same claims that were repeated over and over and over again. Another example of one of the articles of the many was from Quartz that said Trump finally condemns the white supremacists he inspires. And yeah, so the arguments or of past racism he's espoused was they said that when he said that Mexico is sending their people, they're not sending their best people. and that they're sending people who have problems, and they're bringing their problems to our country. And in a list of types of people that are coming across our border, he lists off, among other things, murderers and rapists. He wasn't calling immigrants, which they keep saying immigrants are murderers and rapists. No, they keep saying that, but that's not what he said. He said that murderers and rapists are among the illegal immigrants that are coming across our border. That's a true statement. They're with 80% of the women who are trying to, or who are coming across the border are being raped. Obviously, there are rapists among them. We have cases of illegal immigrants murdering people in the country, so there are murderers among them. That wasn't Sorry, go on.
How is the left? Has anybody pinned one of them down on? At the same time, can you simultaneously explain how there are no rapists and murderers coming across the border, and 80% of women coming across the border are getting raped along the way? How are you squaring that hole there? I don't understand. Has anybody gotten pinned down on that yet?
Well, clearly it's the Americans' rape culture. That's the problem.
Oh yes, exactly. Yes, it's they got Harvey Weinstein down there at the border. He's just passing them on through.
Yep. All these illegal immigrants are going into Hollywood. Clearly. So that's the first one, and it's clearly not what he's talking about, and it's part of the ongoing intentional misunderstanding. Every time that a conservative or Trump talks about illegal immigrants, they intentionally misunderstand it as being immigrants. Trump is not racist against immigrants or Hispanics. He has employed many of them. He has worked with many of them and helped many of them. He has no problem with the Hispanics who are here legally and are part of our working jobs, paying taxes, part of our communities. He's praised them many times in many speeches. How he praised his supporters who are Mexicans. He says that his policies are benefiting every racial group. His policies in helping the economy aren't targeted towards one racial group or another, but one group that is bad for the economy is not an ethnic group. It is a group of people who are coming here illegally. And now people who come here illegally is not from one country either. Someone from any country who comes here illegally is hurting our economy, is hurting our systems. That's what he's criticizing, but the Democrats are intentionally misunderstanding what he's talking about so they can then call him racist.
And I just don't understand what the motivation of it is for. The intentional conflicting or missing my words there, confusing of illegal immigration with legal immigration. Who is that pandering to? It's not pandering to any of the sane voters in America. None of the moderates, certainly, definitely not the right. Definitely not pandering to legal immigrants. They understand what's going on. By and large, they understand what's going on with that, and they know that the illegal immigration causes them nothing but trouble. And furthering on the racism points, in the context of the most recent shootings, it was part of it was saying, oh well, Trump liked it because he was going after brown people, but also Trump's a white supremacist, so he likes that white supremacy thing, and that just doesn't square up either. You just went through a bunch of examples of how he was given lots of opportunities to quote unquote the people of diversity, but his own daughter, she's Jewish, has a Jewish family. He's has given her husband a spot in the administration. He's very well liked by most Jewish community leaders. He's very supportive of Israel, but apparently that's just not good enough for them. It's still sneaking that anti-Semitism in there somewhere.
Yeah, so when I was reading through the mountain of articles calling Trump a racist today, one of them I came across was one calling him an anti-Semite and saying that his criticism of Ilhan Omar is hypocritical because he has also said anti-Semitic things. And what they refer to, Yeah.
Well, that's an accident. If the article says that he's hypocritical, that's kind of an implication that she actually was anti-Semitic too.
Whoops.
That got past somebody's copy editor. Oh boy.
Oh no, they're fired now. They refer to an old article that said that Trump had refused to say that Palestine was the rightful capital of was it Palestine? Of Israel. That's the capital, right?
Tel Aviv, maybe.
Tel Aviv. Sorry.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm blanking on the. But basically, he refused to.
Jerusalem.
Sorry, not Palestine. Jerusalem.
Yeah, Tel Aviv is the quote unquote recognized capital. Jerusalem should be the capital, but that is where the international confusion comes about because they don't want to declare Jerusalem the capital, which I believe that's correct.
Yeah.
I could be massively
botching. I was having a brain fart. So this article is clearly written before he moved the embassy and declared that the rightful capital. So old article. But the first criticism was that he had refused to acknowledge Jerusalem as the capital, which he has since done, and was the first president out of 30 years of presidents promising to do it that actually did it. Actually, followed through on the promise.
How dare he?
I know, right? So that criticism out of the door. That didn't age well, did it? And the second part of the criticism was that he had in front of a group of Jewish donors. He had said that a lot of them were not going to vote for him, even though he was giving a speech there, because he didn't need their money. And out of context, that sounds like he's working off the trope, the common trope that Jewish people control politicians with their money, right? Except for if you look at all his speeches around that time and how he was referring to himself, he was talking about, I used to be a donor like you that would give lots of money and control politicians, just like I used to control Hillary, and now, I know how it works. I know how people give money to try to get benefits from politicians, and since everyone knows, all the big donors know that I don't need their money. They know that if they make donations, I'm not going to give them anything, and that's just the same talking points he gave to every other big group of donors and into his own rallies. So it wasn't like he said that just because he was in front of a group that was Jewish, right?
Yeah.
That was his shtick. His shtick was, I'm so rich, I'm not controlled by donors. that was a campaign point he made over and over and over again.
And even if I think I know which one you're talking about. And it could have gone either way. And let's say worst case scenario, he did mean it like that, and it was clearly, if that's what he had meant by it, it was clearly both ways that you could take it. It was clearly a joke. He's not required to be completely humorous, and the thing that would make it a joke is because he doesn't mean anything cruel by it. One way or the other, he was making a joke at his expense that, hey, I'm just here pandering to you guys, regardless of what reason. I know you've got money. I'm here to pander to you. But I know you're not. I know I don't need the money. I just need your vote. But you're not gonna do that because you can't buy me off.
I have trouble believing he was actually saying it because of a Jewish audience, because he refers to himself as being, I was like one of you guys. I used to give out money to politicians, and getting benefits from them because of that. Well, he's not Jewish.
Yeah, and it's pretty easy to believe that he would just call it out like that, saying, like rich people buy off voters, because he's pretty good at saying the things you're supposed to keep quiet and not really talk about.
Yeah, and then again, White Lion, I think, said it earlier. He's obviously not anti-immigrant because he's married to an immigrant. He's obviously not anti-Jewish because he's got family members who are Jewish. So. And that's also.
Oh, so you got I got a family member who's a Jew. I got a wife who's an immigrant. That defense, is that what we're going with? I got a black friend. Oh man, jeez, yeah. He just spends his whole day surrounding himself with
People he apparently hates.
people who he would just consider people, right? Like that's why that's why he has so many of these quote unquote diverse people around him, is because he just thinks of them as people. But apparently he's just doing that as a big charade. It's a big con. It's a very long con too.
So another one of the things he's accused of, or saying that is proof that he was racist, was that he had told Ilhan Omar and the Squad to go home, and there was a rant, or not a rant, a chant at his one of his rallies saying send them home. Now, again, he told them to go home, fix their countries, figure out how to do that, and then come back. The point being is that the Democrats have this tendency of saying America is so terrible and beyond, and so corrupt, and we should be like all these other, virtuous nations that, but the nations that they're referring to, or the other nations of the world in comparison to America, are horribly corrupt and their economies suck. A lot of them are, as he said, shitholes. And yeah, he's like, no, America's great. If you have, you should go fix those other places that you are saying are amazing that really are not amazing, and then come with a mirror instead of trying to make America like Venezuela. Maybe you should figure out what's wrong with Venezuela first.
Yeah. It's funny. The left continuously they kind of go back and forth on whether or not Trump's a super international criminal mastermind, like Russian spy or something, and also at the same time the literally dumbest person in the world. And so they have this kind of perception that he says things that are ignorant or not well thought out or very simple sentences. But I think what the real case is like they're just hearing. That's all that they're capable of comprehending, is the simple part of it. So what you just said, Trump's whole statement was, go back, fix them, learn how you fix them, and come back and bring us, whatever these great tips are. What they heard was go back, and that's it. They weren't able to process the rest of it, and they completely lost the nuance of it. And the truth of the matter is that a lot of these countries do have a lot of problems. They've also got some really great stuff there. I'm sure that there's little pieces of their culture, traditions and foods and just ways of speaking or fun words. I'm sure that there's lots of great stuff there, but there's also some pretty bad stuff there too. And when you lose the nuance and you only have the binary of it's good or it's bad, and then you also need to line up with, well, I got to be whatever the opposite of Trump says. So if Trump wants to do nuance on, yeah, these places are mostly bad. Yeah, probably they got some redeeming qualities, but they're mostly bad. So as the left, you gotta go the complete opposite of that. You gotta go as far away from that as possible. No room for nuance. These places are amazing. They're absolutely the best.
Speaking of shitholes, another one of the things they say that as is proof that Trump is a racist is because he referred to other countries as shitholes. It wasn't an official statement; it was said inside of a private meeting, but he still said it, and it's still true. He is referring to countries like Ilhan Omar's Somalia, where, other than there being literal shit in the streets, the place has really high crime and really low quality of life, really low education. The economy is terrible. The places you wouldn't want to live.
Yeah, it's so safe that Ilhan and her family had to flee to America to seek asylum.
And I'm sorry if you guys are offended by the honesty, but there's a reason why people are leaving those countries and coming to ours. They're not as good. And some of them are extremely dangerous, and the people who live there live in abject poverty, and there's literal shit in the streets. So, yeah, was it kind of a rude way of saying it? Absolutely. Is it true? Yeah. Is it racist? No. Because he's not saying that the people are shitty. He's not saying that someone, because their skin color or national origin, are bad people. He's saying the country's bad. And that's why what people, that's the point. It's not the people. It's the conditions of the country. That's not a racist statement.
And for far too long, America and basically the rest of the West have, we felt safe in our Western culture to kind of look on those places and say, oh yeah, like yeah, it's not that bad, or yeah, it's not that great, but it's not that bad. We'll kind of let them do what they want. We'll just pretend, we'll be diplomatic about how we talk about them. But that doesn't help the people on the ground there. There are real problems there, and they would really benefit from strong Western countries saying, hey, you guys need to cut that crap out. That's not how you do that's not how you work a functional country. That's not how you keep your citizenry safe. And actually having a world leader, the world leader of the strongest country, actually take note and say the truth about what is actually happening there. That may be their only hope of anything real actually getting done about it.
So
and maybe they're
in the case of Venezuela, so when Trump criticizes Venezuela and says that that country is terrible, it is a manufactured problem. He's criticizing the government and the policies that led up to that. And it's important that we recognize what led to these countries being the way they are, and that the conditions are bad, because there's a life lesson there. So for in the case of Venezuela, socialism doesn't work. If we can't just pretend that every other country is perfect, they're not. There's some that are extremely bad, and we need to identify that and the reasons why.
Well, the reason why is because that wasn't real socialism.
Right. So had
Yes,
they done socialism
yes.
correctly,
Yeah.
it would have
Yeah.
worked. Another thing they attacked him for was so he had previously already condemned the KKK and David Duke, and one time, in one of the times that he was walking, I believe, in the reporter asked him a question. He said, they said he refused to condemn him. He says, what's something about like what does he think about David Duke? He says, I don't even know the guy, seeming to not even understand the question. Now, they went on to publish articles saying, oh, look here, Trump refused to denounce David Duke. He seemed to not even understand who they were talking about, but prior to that date, he'd already clearly condemned the KKK and David Duke by name.
Well, and I don't know if you caught Don Lemon. I think it was earlier this week, or maybe I think it was earlier this week. Don Lemon just straight up came out and said after Trump, I believe it was in response to Trump making a response to the shootings, going through his whole spiel of, we condemn. Obviously, we all condemn. But Don Lemon picked that up and said, yeah, we've been waiting for a long time for him to say that he condemns white supremacy. But now that he's finally said it, I don't know, it just kind of rings hollow. I don't think he meant it. So he can even go ahead and say it after they keep ragging on him that he's not saying it. He'll say it, and he's said it before. That's not the first time that he's said that he condemns that stuff. And then Don Lemon just pops up and goes, yeah, but he didn't mean it.
Yeah. So
like, okay, well, what do you want? You want to get hooked up to a polygraph and just start reading out these sentences on national TV? That'd be a heck of a State of the Union.
Well, for one thing, he used to be a Democrat. He's made a lot of statements condemning racism. He still is a Democrat, by the way. He's just, in comparison to the rest of the Democrats that are currently in power, he seems way more conservative because he's a business Democrat. He's what Democrats used to be, and he was very pro. He was seen as a hero of civil rights in the past. He was praised by minority leaders for what he did for their communities. He used to be one of them, socially acceptable Democrats, right? But just because he now got the same exact policies, but he now has an R next to his name, he's now evil. But let's put something to bed real quick. They keep saying he's never condemned until this time white supremacy. That's an absolute falsehood. He's condemned the KKK, he's condemned racism, and he's condemned white nationalism repeatedly. Here's a small sample of him doing that.
Our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. When you open your heart to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice. Racism is evil, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans.
So, that is the small sample of
Wow, Dyer, how much time did it take you to find all that? I mean, you must have paid like a fleet of researchers, like a whole newsroom full of journalists to go dig up all of those crazy facts. Like, man, how much money did it cost you to source all that and fact check that?
About 30 minutes.
Wow, man, that's
Yeah.
Geez, could you imagine what you could do if you had the resources of any of the mainstream media just to look those up and use YouTube, use Google, use anything.
Hey, by the way, thank you, Sky Bluepaw, for the lemon. Very much appreciated. I love them.
Thank
lemons. Now I'll make myself some lemonade.
The government's gonna come get you for not paying taxes on that.
Actually, I am paying taxes on all the money you guys donate. I have to pay taxes on.
Life gives you lemons. The government takes taxes.
Exactly. Roughly 12% of it. In any case, so he's clearly condemned racism from the very beginning, and it's never going to be enough for them. So even when he does, they say, "Oh, you didn't say you are sorry for all the white supremacy you've encouraged." Wait. So basically, you didn't want him to spread a message of unity and condemning of hatred. You wanted him to just accept some guilt for something he didn't do.
What do you remember what you just said unity, and that reminded me of I think it was Newsweek had an article at the beginning of the week, and it might not have been Newsweek. It was somebody in the U.S. That was one of the media outlets. They had an article that basically said something to the effect of Trump's speech has message of unity in it, and it was just like that's what he said. He said he was probably to promote unity, and the article was titled that line from his speech, and they got just reamed by everybody on Twitter. Yeah, so 5% of the populace, but everybody on Twitter was upset about it. All the other journalists, all the other media outlets were like, "How could you possibly say that Trump said this thing in his speech, even though it's true? How could you tell everybody that?" And they ended up actually changing the article. Or they actually changed the title to say something else that was much. I don't remember what they changed it to, but it was much more opinion rather than the first title, which was actually just a perfectly fine title because it was simple and it was to the point of what the article was actually about.
Yeah. Hey, Shadow Wolf 87 says that's the thing, Dire Wolf. They operate primarily on guilt. It's their main currency. Now, I think that they don't want Trump to be right about anything. They'll even take something completely good he's doing. Think about it. He called for unity. He condemned hatred and radicalism on all sides. And again, that's another thing. After the Charlottesville, he clearly condemned white nationalism and hatred and racism. And then he also said that he condemned the bad actors on both sides because he recognizes there's also racist. There's also radicals that were on the other side of the conflict. There was Antifa, and Antifa is also bad. Trump is saying, yes, white nationalists, bad. Antifa, violent people who attack innocent people, also bad. The news media went crazy saying that Trump had refused to condemn white nationalism, instead said there was good people on both sides. Well, he said that there was bad people on both sides, and there were some people who were protesters who were not involved with either of the two radical groups, that were good people that left, that weren't part of the violence. So what's wrong? What Trump said was literally true. They focus on one thing he said and choose to ignore everything else he said, and then use that false premise as an accusation that he is racist somehow, or refusing to condemn white nationalism.
I just don't know what the I don't know what the safety valve on this escalation in the fake news is going to be. It seems to be every time I think, oh wow, they really can't get any worse than that. And we're going to see some clips here in a little bit later in the show that are just way above and beyond. But every time I think, they just can't get any worse. There's, what other thing are they just going to make up? They always find something else, and they'll focus in on. Vox had an article, I think it was last week, that debunked itself in the title, saying, Trump claimed that he was a 9/11 first responder, and the first line of the article is Trump says, "Oh, I wasn't actually a first responder, but I was down there," which was factually true statements. He wasn't a first responder, but he was down there supporting and helping because New York's kind of his home. He has a lot of investments there, and he's a big member of the community. But they just move on from either making up stuff, saying literally the opposite of what he said, or focusing in on something, a few words, and completely deleting the context around it and turning it into something that it's not. And they keep doing this. It keeps getting more and more egregious the way that they're doing it, and I just don't know what's the how far can this possibly go. I don't know what the relief valve for that is.
I don't know, but I know the first step is people like our audience realizing how the game is played. They realizing that the mainstream media depends on people just reading the titles of their articles, and even if they know that okay, we got to report what actually happened in the body of the article or in the last paragraph and last line of the article, possibly. We can maintain our pseudo credibility by saying the truth somewhere in the real article, but we can fool a lot of people. We can change minds. We can socially engineer the populace by using misleading and deceptive headlines. He's got to recognize the game and not be fooled by it. That's the first thing. But I think that eventually, I have too much faith in the general American populace. I know there's a lot of idiots out there, but I think that with the freedom of information through the internet as it is currently, I think Americans are too smart to completely fall for it. Because the credibility, I mean, look at the ratings on CNN. People are getting wise to their games.
Here's the problem, though, is it's not that I necessarily doubt the ability of the American people to figure that out, but you've got probably 70 to 80% of the country. You got the exhausted majority, I think they're called. They're not looking at the news the way we are. They're not digging through articles every day. They're lucky if they catch one or two news stories in a day, and that's probably just in passing and by accident as they go past their homepage or scroll past a tweet or something. And so they're not actively engaging in this. And so you catch those headlines and you hear people talking about it, and it's asking a lot for for the American people. I think it is asking a lot for them to be able to see through that, especially if they're not paying attention to it. People got jobs, families, kids, wives, husbands, all that stuff to deal with. A lot of people don't have time to be source fact checking what they assume should already be fact checked news. And you just pick up these little bits from the headlines, and it's really even knowing what they're doing. It's hard for me to look at some of these headlines and be like, oh wow, that's just a straight up lie. I still when I look at some of these articles, I see the headline and go, oh wow, is that true? That can't be true. Wow, they wouldn't put it on there if it wasn't true, would they? And yes, the answer is yes, they would. But you still got that doubt. It's an appeal to authority, and a lot of people just don't have time to kind of figure that out on their own, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, but what can we do? And that is basically what we're doing now. We are looking into the articles. We're people who happen to have the interest and the time to do so. We look into the articles, look for the proof, and now we've been able to show you the clear evidence that what they've been saying is a lie. Every time you hear, oh, Trump refused to condemn white nationalism, you guys are now armed with not only the knowledge, but also the video, that yes, he has repeatedly denounced it. And that's just a few of the examples. So the best we can do is educate, and hopefully we're doing it in an entertaining way. But, if we can help spread the truth, and if you guys in the audience can help spread the truth when you hear lies, that's the best thing we can do to solve the problem. So
I agree.
Another article, this one is from the Washington Post. They titled it, "In Alarming Teleprompter Slip-Up, Trump Condemns White Supremacy Instead of Tacitly Endorsing It."
Wait, the Washington Post? You sure that wasn't The Onion?
I know
that sounds like an
reads
Onion headline.
like an Onion title, but it's actually from the Washington Post. And
wow.
What they're implying in this article is that Trump would not, of course, actually condemn white nationalism on purpose. He would only have done that because someone wrote it on the teleprompter for him, and that he usually only tacitly endorses it. But we've already seen the proof that he doesn't tacitly endorse it. He has downright condemned it over and over again. So the premise of the misleading title obviously is already wrong. They then went on to use all the previous examples that I already talked about, claiming that Trump was racist, and also threw in that because he used the word infestation, according to them, it has to mean racism, right?
It's hilarious watching them bend over backwards trying to explain why, when Trump said Baltimore has rats infesting it, that he didn't really mean that it's got rats infesting it, when it clearly does, and everybody knows that it does. What he really meant was brown people. Like, they just can't take that maybe he meant a real thing that is actually provably true. Like, no. He must have been using this, again, dog whistles and subterfuge. I bet you if you looked at the first letter of every word, it probably spells out like racism or Hitler or something.
Oh, that sounds like a conspiracy theory. That would never happen. Okay, let's watch this video. This is pretty egregious. This is from MSNBC, which, I mean, you'd think they'd already sunk low enough, but this is the nail in their
this video is outrageous.
This video is ridiculous. Okay, here it goes. So this is a ex-FBI. So this is an FBI. What's the word?
Analyst.
FBI analyst talking to MSNBC.
I believe current FBI analyst, isn't he?
FBI analyst, yes. And he's going to say some pretty ridiculous stuff, and MSNBC's anchor is not going to push back at all. Here we go.
Our chief executive is seen as almost a mentor and a radicalizer. And unfortunately, today, we did not hear what we needed to hear from that person that these extremists and unstable people look to. He spoke in the passive voice, in the collective voice. We didn't hear first person from him. We didn't hear, I condemn white hate ideology. We heard the nation must condemn it. Well, the nation does condemn it, but we didn't hear what we needed to hear. So what happens is the extremists interpret what the president read off a script today as something he needed to say, something he didn't really want to say. So the president's either getting really good advice and rejecting it, or he's getting really bad advice. And I'll give you an example of that.
Okay, first off, he says that, he implies that because he's reading off a teleprompter, that it's perceived that that's not what Trump really wanted to say. But Trump, like any president, does read through, practice, and sign off, and often edit, as Trump is known to do, is actually to write and edits on his own speeches. He wouldn't have said it unless he wanted to say it. It's not like he was surprised by it appearing on the teleprompter, without him expecting to it. He's not a robot. He's not like Obama. When the teleprompter fails, he just falls apart and doesn't know what to say. All right? That actually happened, by the way.
Oh, multiple times. Those were some of my favorite compilations of the teleprompter going awry, and then Obama bot just losing
Failure.
all ability. Obama.exe has stopped responding.
Exactly. Trump's not like that. With no preparation and no speech, no teleprompter, he can give a speech because he actually believes the things. He knows what he believes. But yeah, he's better on teleprompter because he's just more succinct, right? But okay, then he goes on to say, "Oh, but Trump didn't condemn white nationalism the way I wanted him to. He was in the middle of giving this wonderful, speech of unity where we need to come together and fight hate in all its forms and fight white supremacy. But I don't want unity. I want him to take personal responsibility for white nationalism."
It's really funny. Because his problem was with Trump saying "we," right? What Trump kept saying "we," and that's one of the things that was a really huge dichotomy between him and Obama. Obama said the word "I" a lot, like statistically significant a lot that he said the word "I," and it was indicative of a narcissism in his personality, and that it wasn't a we thing or an us together thing. It was a him. It was an I. It was a me thing. And Trump is very different, where he likes to, he likes to like bring people along, make you feel included, even if you didn't do anything. He wants to bring you in. It's a big family kind of thing. And so him saying "we" there is much more indicative of him identifying with the country, his fellow countrymen, with us. Whereas, Obama probably would have said "I condemn." He probably would have sat there and believed, "Oh, well, I do condemn it, and I know the rest of America doesn't, so I'm going to say I instead of saying we." But Trump knows that he and the rest of us, that's just the default position Americans have, is that we condemn that sort of stuff. That's not something that we support. It's not something that we've ever supported. And so he knows that saying "we" covers all the bases because that's true, and it's what he believes, and it's what's true.
We got a lemon from Tetris Freak. Thank you very much for the lemon. And also, we got a super chat from Slowpoke Garcia for $2 saying, "The idea of someone hearing messages in people's words is generally a sign of mental illness, which both these shooters and CNN have, apparently."
Yeah, do you think this guy has a black lab named Sam by chance?
I would bet money on it. I would definitely bet money on him having a lab named Sam's. I think you're right. Trump has, I think it's just like his shtick. I think he genuinely cares about the country.
It's his leadership style.
I think he cares about the country doing well, whereas Obama was very focused on himself and having a legacy to prop him up. He even didn't care about the Democrat Party. He left the Democrat Party penniless, in debt. I didn't care about the party or the people or his constituents. He was all about himself. And the Democrats, luckily, saw him as someone who benefited them, even though he was only seeking to benefit himself. Trump, though he also is a narcissist, he still is not the kind of narcissist that Obama is. Trump still cares about himself. There's a certain level of narcissism required to want to be president, right? But he does deeply care about the country and the country doing well, and that's what I like about him. There's a lot of things I don't like about him, honestly. I don't think he's the best guy in the world. I think he's, he's got a personality I don't really like that much, except for the fact that he loves his country and he wants it to do well. That's enough for me to vote for him. In comparison to everyone else that's running right now, that puts him leaps and bounds ahead. When he's competing against people who hate this country and who want to fundamentally change this country, who want to destroy the economy and don't care who is harmed, when you have people like that are calling for a recession in our economy and don't care about people losing jobs just because they want to spite Trump, when you have people who don't care about the country doing well, then Trump looks great in comparison.
And I really wonder. It's kind of it's maybe too big of a question for tonight, but I wonder what would have happened if Hillary gotten elected. I definitely think that these things would still be happening. It's hard to say if they'd be better or worse, but there's kind of this myth that this sort of stuff didn't start happening until Trump got elected, but there was all kinds of violence and shooting during Obama's term. Obama wasn't the one being blamed for it, though. Certainly not taking any responsibility for it. But I seem to think that these things would have continued to happen, and I'm concerned with the could have been of how Hillary would have handled it, and the type of blame that she would have thrown back out on the other country, onto the rest of the country.
CT 117 said that, Wolf, I know we seem to be praising Trump and he is doing better than Obama, and we have to but we have to address that he still has some flaws. So Trump is a flawed guy, and though I don't expect perfection from anybody, I have a philosophy that everyone in your life will disappoint you at some point in your life. And if you go through life expecting anyone to be perfect and anyone to always be dependable, then you are a fool. You need to know that you will fail people, and they will fail you. And if you don't go approach life that way, you with the readiness to forgive, because all humanity is flawed, then it's just going to cause you problems. Now, Trump, yes, I disagree with a lot of things he said, and recently said as well. I don't agree with all his behavior. And on the Saturday show, we actually have a couple stories where we're going to be criticizing Trump, because we aren't tribalists. I don't support Trump because he has an R next to his name. That's meaningless to me. If Obama was a good leader and actually had good policies that I agreed with, I would have voted for him. But he didn't. He was an idiot who had policies that were bad for the country. That's why I wouldn't vote for him. I vote based on how is it those policies benefit the country. And so when Trump is wrong, when he suggests policies I disagree with, I'm going to criticize him. And, some of you guys might not like that, but at least you know that it's my opinions are based on principle, not based on a tribe.
Well, and there's at least room for discussion on this side of the political aisle, right? There's lots of things to disagree on, and lots of ways to make them better by discussing them. But on the left, there's just no opportunity for that. Anytime you want to, if you question the official narrative at all, you're a racist. You question anything, there's no room for discussion whatsoever. It's just you're either a racist or you agree with us.
Yep, and Triumvirate said made a great point. He said that actions speak louder than words, and yeah, they do. I think sometimes Trump says things just for the political reaction, just to get on people's skin. He does like to troll, but what he's doing has been really good for the country. Shadow Wolf says, I actually really like that you're willing to criticize Trump where he deserves it. Well, then you're going to love Saturday.
We're going to be all over him on Saturday.
It's good, yeah. It's been a bad week, in my opinion, for Trump, honestly. But
yeah, it's been a hard week for everybody. Yeah.
It's been a hard week for everyone, and sometimes people make poor choices when they're under the gun. How's it put? Bad choice of words.
No, Jesus Christ! Cut the stream.
Oh my God. Okay, so going back to the video, it gets better.
Is this where he's getting into the? Because I can't hear. Is this where he's getting into the one thing?
This is where he's going to go into the 8/8 conspiracy, and he's going to prove that Trump is sending secret signs, secret racist white nationalist signs.
Oh, don't ruin it! Don't ruin it. Let's just play it.
Let's play it. Okay.
So it's the little things and language and messaging that matters. The president said that we will fly our flags at half-mast until August 8th. That's 8/8. Now, I'm not going to imply that he did this deliberately, but I am using it as an example of the ignorance of the adversary that's being demonstrated by the White House. The numbers 8/8 are very significant in neo-Nazi and white supremacy movement. Why? Because the letter H is the 8th letter of the alphabet, and to them, the numbers 8/8 together stand for Heil Hitler. So we're going to be raising the flag back up at dusk on 8/8. No one's thinking about this. No one's giving him the advice, or he's rejecting the advice. So understand your adversary to counter the adversary.
Jeez Louise. he probably has a bunch of pictures and yarn connecting them in his house somewhere. That's insane.
I mean, he could have predicted the end of the world with with some math like that. That was some pretty intense math.
So, okay, so the president.
How many levels did he go through on that? That was like 3, 4. I think it was 4 or 5 levels before he finally got to Hail Hitler.
Yeah, he seriously said that. It's ridiculous. So, the president doesn't pick how many days a flag is flown at half-mast. There is policy for different scenarios and different people who have died. For government officials and such, it's 30 days, and for smaller events and that are not government officials, there's set numbers of days, and his people in his cabinet would come to him with the, here's the policy, do you approve it? He doesn't dictate to them what days and for how long.
Are you telling me? Are you telling me that there's not somebody in the government just watching all the speeches, and if he just happens to say how many days he wants to flag at half-mast, they're like, oh, that must be it, and we're going to send out the order. But we have to watch his speeches. That's the only way that we know. That's the only way to figure it out.
Is the assumption that they waited for the attack to happen in March, and they somehow knew it was going to be happening in March, so they could then, within 4 days, be able to have it be perfectly on 8/8.
August.
I mean, come on.
August.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's very, very absurd. We got a $2 super chat from Silva Garcia. Thank you very much. Saying, someone get him in the hospital. Human arms can't stretch that long. It was quite a stretch. So is the assumption that Trump should have seen this because he's a white nationalist? Or is the assumption that he has white nationalists writing his speeches? Maybe, though, he's just stumbled upon, he accidentally proved that Trump is not a white nationalist because he didn't catch this. Huh?
It's funny. It's funny that a FBI analyst, after all the Trump Russia conspiracy stuff and the provable deep state connections with that have definitely come out in the last few weeks, that he wasn't able to find any of that, but he also thinks that there's enough room in the FBI and in Trump's administration to have this white nationalist conspiracy, sneaking 8/8 into all of Trump's speeches and all this coded language. He thinks that there's enough room for those people in the Trump administration. How are they going to find a position when they still got all of Mueller's guys in there?
That's a really good point. So they actually had solid evidence. That Comey admitted there was solid evidence that Hillary had committed multiple and repeated of the same crime over and over again that would normally get people put in jail for multiple lifetimes. He said that we have all this evidence, but we're still not going to indict, right? But then, Trump's clearly guilty because the 8/8, because of August 8th. Oh my God, he's obviously a white nationalist.
They should. The
standards of evidence are vary quite a bit, don't they?
Yeah. What's what's the crystal lady for the DNC candidate? What's her name? They need to ask her. Is numerology this is right up her alley? I bet you should be able to get to the bottom of this pretty quickly.
Yeah,
probably. I wonder what Trump's sign is. I bet you that's got an 8 in there somewhere. That's what's his sign? What's his astrology? What was it Jupiter ascending when he was born? I bet you that's got some kind of white supremacy tie to it.
I try not to say her name because if you say her name, she'll realize where you are, and then she can cast a spell on you.
Well, you can only say that's why you only say it once. I say it 3 times. Jesus,
gotta know the rules of magic, right?
Obviously, no. You gotta say it. You gotta say Trump's name 8 times. So.
I'm seeing the connection.
There you go.
The point is that MSNBC has clearly jumped the shark on this, but bringing him on, I mean, okay, maybe they just brought him on. He said something crazy, but then they have the opportunity to say, no, that's crazy. Clearly, Trump wasn't considering the obscure white nationalist meme connection in August 8th. They're obviously going to rebuff this guy, right? They're going to say
Clearly, right? Because I think this is just on its face. This was like a really insane line of reasoning that you just went through. I don't see how anybody could look at that and be like, oh, wow, that's really valuable information you've brought us here.
Right. I mean, even though this is the media company that had Rachel Madcow for 2 years spreading a clearly false conspiracy about Russian collusion, even with that standard, the 8/8 conspiracy has to be a leap too far for even MSNBC.
You know what? I see you got a few seconds left here on this video. I bet we don't even need to watch it because it's so obvious that they're gonna just rip this guy up. Say, you're an idiot. Why would you say something like that? That's completely absurd. So,
well, even though we know what they're gonna say, why don't we just watch them tell this guy that he's crazy?
All right, I got extra time. We can watch it.
Got a few seconds left.
I know you're keeping your options open there, Frank, but as chilling as that is to hear,
oh God,
you're saying it is possible that someone who knows better
oh no,
is
No.
or
No.
the words that show up and are
No.
or are supposed to be read verbatim by the president.
oh my God.
Oh yes, it's very fascinating information. Thank you for bringing that to us. I'm really glad that we brought you on to talk about that.
So, as it turns out, he didn't rebuff what he said at all. He just repeated it back to him and said that was chilling, as if he's accepting it as a possible truth.
This is an opinion show, right? Like that's not like a midday news show, right?
It says breaking news on the screen. It was
wow. That's pretty incredible. I wonder. I'd really like to see a collab between this guy and CNN contributor Richard Spencer. I think that they'd have a really interesting conversation about all this.
Yeah, funny thing, they keep saying that white supremacists support Trump, but when they brought on a white supremacist, Richard Spencer, the CNN contributor Richard Spencer, he actually said that he didn't support Trump and that Trump wasn't really a white nationalist and his policy did nothing to help them, and that their tweets was just red meat for white supremacists that really was meaningless.
It's actually kind of interesting that the way that he said that. So that is, again, CNN contributor Richard Spencer. He said that on CNN when he was asked about it, that Trump hasn't really done anything that would help or support them. And so this guy's going on saying, oh well, Trump's throwing these kind of quote unquote gang sign type things where he's slipping 8/8s in there. Well, Richard Spencer just said that he's not interested in dog whistles. He wants actual policy and things coming through. So there's no reason. This isn't like an Illuminati book or like National Treasure or something like that, where like these secret coded messages are going to lead to some kind of gold pile or something. It's if they think that he's actually helping out these white supremacists by slipping 8/8s into his speeches, like that's not the kind of help that they're asking for, and it's not the kind of help that would be meaningful to supporting white supremacy. It's almost now bear with me here. It's kind of crazy here. It's almost like he's not supporting white supremacy at all.
No, it can't be. That no way. He has to because I heard on CNN that he's a white supremacist.
Yes.
Yeah. So and MSNBC also said it. There's this whole thing about 8/8s, and it's solid proof that he's a white supremacist.
Seems legit.
Yeah, seems legit. So there's also mixed into that the false premise that if a white supremacist supports something you say, then what you said is, of course, supporting white supremacy. That is a completely factually inaccurate. So here's an example. Trump could say that I like chocolate cake. And there became white supremacists out there saying, hey, I also like chocolate cake. Chocolate cake is great. I support Trump's statement about chocolate cake. Does that mean that chocolate cake is now white supremacist? Clearly it is. So another example actually happened. Trump says, I am against illegal immigration. White supremacists are also against illegal immigration, but they're also against immigration and black people and Hispanics. But they also, among all the things that they also hate illegal immigration because it includes immigrants.
Wait a second. But the Democrats keep conflating illegal and legal immigration. I think I can see where this is going, but
Yes.
I'll let you continue.
So the thing is, these two groups, Trump supporters and white nationalists, which are different groups, they both are against illegal immigration. So they both support Trump when he criticizes illegal immigration. The difference is their reasoning for why they're against illegal immigration. White supremacists are racist. Trump supporters like a good functioning economy and also want people to come here legally. Different motives, both agree with the same statement. So just because a white supremacist agrees with something you say, it doesn't mean the same thing you said is now supporting of white nationalism. Just like if David Duke says he supports Trump, it doesn't mean that Trump supports David Duke. It's not how it works. You know that shooter in Ohio? He supported frickin' what's her name? Pocahontas.
Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth
Yes,
Warren.
yes.
So since that radical, violent leftist supported Elizabeth Warren, does that mean Elizabeth Warren supports radical, violent shooters?
Well, if you've been watching the news lately, I kind of forgot that there was even a shooting in Dayton because they keep calling it the El Paso shooting that shot X many people there, and then also just ambiguously a certain number of other people died in Dayton as well. But let's not talk about that shooter. Let's not talk about his motives. Let's talk about the environmental extremist from his manifesto he put out, that he was an environmental extremist that thought that we were overpopulated. Yeah, let's talk about how he's a conservative somehow.
Right. Who did? That's
But
funny.
definitely don't talk about the guy who was reposting Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren propaganda all day long.
Right. So the point is, they use another fallacy to try to say that Trump's, conservative opinions, or centrist opinions, really, they're somehow racist because of someone who supports it. That's an idiotic fallacy. And also, I think it's kind of rounds up all of the many different debunked arguments they have for why Trump is racist. And I think that with what we've gone over today, it's pretty darn clear he's not. What do you say?
I agree. I agree with you.
All right. So I'm actually out of time for the show today, but I had a fun time talking about how Trump isn't a racist. So thank you all for donating and watching and supporting. Please like, share, subscribe. If you are watching this show and you liked it, please give us a follow. We very much would appreciate that. And if you would, please join us on our Saturday show when we will be going over all the news from the week. And boy, is there a lot of it.
And also ripping on Trump. So tune in to see that. Get angry at him.
Yep. So he has definitely stepped into this week. So we'll have a lot to say about that. Anyways, thank you all. I love doing the show with you guys. See you on Saturday. Direwolf out.
Peace.